We are in an era of significant load growth in the US. And this is happening because of the rise of AI in particular. One, two, three. All right, guys, we have a big announcement for you today. We are super excited to announce the launch of Yield Energy. So Polaris Energy Services is rebranding to Yield Energy. We're announcing it to the world today. Really, we have almost been pseudo operating in stealth mode over the past year, Tim, working on how we're building the business and how we're evolving the business, and really felt like we needed to formally rebrand the business based on the changes and the evolution of the business. And so today we're announcing Yield Energy. YieldEnergy.com is where you can find more. But Tim, man, we have been at this for over a year now, building Polaris Energy Services, and really excited to kind of announce this next chapter of Yield Energy.
Yeah, super excited about it. We've been, like you said, working on the business model, on how we can kind of reposition Polaris for the next stage of the company. And a lot of that kind of culminates with the launch of Yield Energy. So excited to kind of get into all the technical side of things of how you're thinking about it, Ty. But before we jump in, let's maybe just kind of talk about the state of energy right now. It seems to be a topic on every podcast, every blog article. It's about, the AI race and electrification and stress on the grid. So before we kind of jump into the business, let's just talk about the opportunity and kind of the current state of energy right now in the US.
Tim, I think this is really important to start with because the state of the grid, the energy markets, this is really driving a lot of kind of how we're thinking about the business, how we're evolving the business, why we're making this move to Yield Energy. But we are in an era of significant load growth in the US. And this is happening because of the rise of AI in particular. The hyperscalers, the AI companies need large data centers that consume a crazy amount of power, right? Like a data center a few years ago, a big one was 100 megawatts, and today a big one is a gigawatt, right? These are massive facilities that consume massive amounts of energy, and the grid simply can't support it. So you add on top of the AI race, the electrification of everything, onshoring of manufacturing, we're seeing just a staggering growth on the grid that really we haven't experienced in our lifetimes. The US electricity demand is projected to increase by about 16% by 2029, and peak demand is expected to grow from 800 gigawatts in 2024 to approximately 900 gigawatts in 2030, with an additional 100 gigawatts needed to replace retiring fossil fuels. So we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of gigawatts, Tim, that are needed to support this environment. And utilities have two options of how do they do this, right? Right now, a lot of utilities are saying, no, we can't interconnect data centers fast enough. We don't have the capacity to support these data centers, but we need to support them to support this economic driver for the US. This is kind of national importance. And so there's two things utilities can do. One, they can build new power plants, right? And as we all know, that is expensive. It takes a lot of time. And in many cases, it's not, clean, renewable energy. Utilities have to use whatever means possible. And so they can build a new gas peaker plant. They can build new renewables, but these things take years to build and they're expensive. The other option for utilities is to have flexible capacity. And this means using things like virtual power plants. And a virtual power plant is essentially a portfolio of flexible energy resources, distributed energy resources that can respond to grid needs, because the grid is built to support that peak demand, right? So oftentimes, normal operation, you're never getting close to hitting capacity of the grid, but during those peak events, which are, happen a few times a month or a few times a year in different markets, where everyone's cranking their AC or everyone's pumping in agriculture, those are periods where you have to have a grid to support that. And so utilities have these two options: build more power plants, or two, have flexible resources. And utilities are now desperate for solutions. I think 10 years ago, Tim, utilities didn't have this dynamic at play. They had enough capacity. So the idea of a virtual power plant, yeah, it was maybe cheaper and faster to deploy and clean, but it was a nice to have, not a need to have. Today, this is now mission critical, and utilities are polling for solutions in the market of how can we have flexible capacity. And so this idea of virtual power plants has been around for a while, but it's really taking shape right now in this unique time in history, Tim. So that's super exciting for a company like ours.
Totally. Let's maybe like dive into the kind of the different sectors. Like residential obviously is a big consumer. There's commercial, industrial, and then there's agriculture. So maybe talk to us about kind of the nuance of operating these markets in ag versus the other sectors.
Yeah, this is, I think, really important. Is utilities have to figure out how to address each of these different customer segments, and they're very different, right? How a residential customer uses energy is different from commercial industrial, and is very different from agriculture. And so there's various programs, demand response being one that's been around a long time, where utilities will pay end customers, energy users, to adjust and shift their energy use. If you've ever got a notification on your smart thermostat saying earn $150 by participating in this Flex Rewards program, that's flexible capacity. By enrolling in that, you earn $150, and you're helping manage this grid dynamic, this grid stress. So you are taking part of it, you benefit financially, and you're adjusting your energy use accordingly. So for residential, the big one is smart thermostats, Tim, because smart thermostats can kind of intelligently and reliably respond to these grid needs. And the AC is a big, driver of electricity, but EVs are huge in residential now, of EV charging. I have a Rivian, I charge at home. And so how do you participate in, charging off peak or charging when the grid is less stressed? And so that's another big piece of residential. And then commercial industrial, of course, these are, big consumers of electricity, and this can be across multiple different industries of how they're consuming power. A lot of big commercial industrial customers will participate in these programs if it makes sense for their operation, right? It's hard to shift your power if you're running a packing plant or a manufacturing plant that's running 24/7, right? So it kind of takes the right type of business and operation to be able to kind of support things like this. And it's a harder decision, right? When you're an individual, you can make a decision for your house. I'm going to opt into this, AC rewards program, the smart thermostat program. But when you're commercial industrial, it's, on behalf of a business. So you have to make sure you have a plan that the ROI is there. And then Tim, in agriculture, this has been a tough market for utilities to kind of crack and figure out, because farmers, the bulk of the energy use in agriculture is pumping load. And utilities have had a tough time trying to figure out how to get more flexibility in agriculture. And that's what Polaris Energy Services has really focused on over the past 10 years. So Polaris has been around for about a decade doing demand response programs, particularly in California, and having growers benefit from participating in these programs. So growers can earn tens of thousands of dollars a year by participating. So instead of a residential customer earning $150 by adjusting their AC unit, it's a grower that adjusts and shifts their irrigation use and can earn tens of thousands of dollars, right? Because a large pump has a lot of energy use. So that's what Polaris is really focused on historically.
Yeah, maybe talk us about kind of the journey over the past 10 years, because when Polaris started, there wasn't a lot of irrigation automation out in the space. Now, as we look around kind of the ag tech community, there's a whole ecosystem of irrigation automation companies that are doing really sophisticated like valve automation, pump control, a lot of that. So talk about kind of the next chapter.
Tim, you hit it, right? Polaris's approach to flexibility programs for growers has been to enable it with hardware, because it's much easier for a grower to participate in these programs and earn incentives and revenue if they have automation of their pumps. And this is the example would be it's much easier to participate in the smart thermostat or in the AC program when you have a smart thermostat, right? Because the smart thermostat controls the AC unit and does it for you, so you don't have to worry about it. It'd be like the idea of asking a resident to go like manually turn off your AC at certain times and go over to the AC unit, turn it on, turn it off. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So we've had the belief, the business has had the belief that really this is all enabled with when the pump can be automated. And so Polaris developed their own proprietary hardware, a pump controller, to basically enable participation. And that's what's really driven really high performance in these flexibility programs and made us really attractive to work with different utilities in the space. But Tim, when 10 years ago, this was a necessity because growers didn't have automation on their farms 10 years ago. And so we built a solution to enable it. When I joined, I recognized things have changed over the past 10 years. Things have changed on our farm, right? On our farm 10 years ago, we definitely didn't have any automation. And today we have significantly more automation and control of pumps. And this is not happening just on our farm, but on all farms. And so I took a step back and said, hey, it's great that we've enabled this with our own hardware, but there's a ton of great hardware automation companies out there that I would love to partner with. We've been evolving how we're thinking about hardware to really a hardware agnostic model where we can integrate with the hardware that growers use and prefer, right? And there's a ton of great irrigation automation companies out there, Tim, that we have been behind the scenes establishing and building integrations with, and excited to announce a lot of those today of the great companies that we're working with in the irrigation automation space.
Yes, the idea is now that a grower, they have their hardware company of choice. They can now participate in these various programs natively through that hardware software combo, which is really exciting. Where it's the ability to turn on an asset that you already own into a new revenue stream or a cost savings program.
And this is what really attracted us to Polaris in the first place. Was we don't charge anything to growers, and rather we are really unlocking, Yield Energy is unlocking this new revenue stream for agriculture in a time that growers desperately need new streams of revenue and ways to improve their margin. And so the utilities pay us to build these programs, to implement the programs, to manage all of these energy resources out there on the farm. And so this provides new revenue for growers like us, for growers listening that are desperate and trying to improve margin on their farm by participating in these programs. And so that's what's like really fires me up, is we're not asking the grower to pay anything. Rather, we're making the farmer more profitable. And it's not just marketing speak, it's reality, right? I think on average, Tim, we have paid growers that are enrolled in Yields programs earn on average about $30,000 a year, and getting a $30,000 check in the mail, that's material.
Totally. It's huge. Like in the farm economy right now, like being able to get a check like that to offset the rising cost of energy is a huge mitigation tool to protect against that. So Ty, how does all this work? I'm looking on the website. There's probably some vernacular that people in ag aren't super familiar with. I'm seeing a lot of DERMS platform. Maybe talk to us about what a DERMS platform is and really like what the offering is for utilities. Yeah,
so fundamentally, Yield Energy offers a DERMS platform. And what is a DERMS platform? It's a funny energy acronym that stands for Distributed Energy Resource Management System. So our software platform, our technology platform, orchestrates all of the different various energy assets in the field. So historically, we've done that with our own hardware where we connect to our hardware in the field. But now, with this evolution, we connect to third-party hardware in the field. And that allows those end growers that already have that hardware to connect to these types of programs and participate in the programs. So our software platform is what's connecting the utility and the price signals and demand response signals from the utility and propagating that to all of these assets on farm. So we manage that whole process and manage the enrollment and ultimately build these flexibility programs with utilities. So we can go to a utility in a different state, Arizona, Alabama, Texas, wherever, and say, hey, we can build you a flexibility program that's going to provide you flexible capacity to your grid that you desperately need. Utility says, sounds great. We've had a tough time figuring this out in ag. We work with them to build a program that's going to work for growers in their operations and make sense and incentivize the grower. And we facilitate all this technology platform, our DERMS.
Yeah, so definitely like applications outside of California, like anywhere really where there's, agricultural use with a lot of water pumping happening, high cost of energy. So yeah, a lot of states in the US already have similar programs like this on demand response, but haven't really like focused on agriculture yet. So a huge opportunity to kind of expand the footprint of what Yield does in new markets. Ty, let's talk a little bit about kind of the hardware partnerships. We mentioned how that works, but like in terms of integrations, how are you thinking about kind of what that looks like partnering with the various ag tech companies out there?
This is what's, I think, so exciting about the launch of Yield. It's really signaling this transition and building our ecosystem of ag tech partners. And so we have 7 irrigation automation companies, 7 in counting, where this is a growing group of partnerships that we're building integrations with, that we have integrations into their hardware. And really, this is the way I describe it is this integration adds a feature to their solution, right? It's a feature that growers can choose to participate in or not, right? They can opt into it or not and participate in these revenue generating or money saving programs. And so we can build these integrations with really any on-farm energy asset. So our focus, our core business has been in irrigation, but these connections, these integrations work in any on-farm energy asset, whether that's batteries or solar or facility load that is in agriculture, connecting and allowing and enabling the end customer to enroll those energy assets into programs. So that's really the vision here, is expanding this ag tech ecosystem to be working with the leading ag tech partners across agriculture and across the farm.
And the nice thing is that we're talking about software integrations where through APIs, we can, for whatever the program is, send signals to these various companies to respond to the events that are happening, or in the case of dynamic rates, be feeding pricing into these systems. So when growers are making an irrigation plan and looking at like, here's the next week based on an agronomic need, I need to irrigate X hours per day, we can kind of layer on the cost of energy and give growers an additional lens to be making those decisions where I might need to irrigate 5 hours tomorrow. Here's the best 5 hours to irrigate. So we can do that in kind of a very elegant way for growers where they're not having to navigate multiple systems. So it's really like delivering, it's a win-win for everybody involved, for the hardware companies and for the grower. So Ty, a lot of changes have been happening. The name change, obviously pretty cool. Yield Energy is a sweet domain. Talk about kind of the thinking behind that of what this signals and why a name change was appropriate.
Well, like we said, we've been doing a lot of thinking, a lot of evolving about how we think about how we go to market, to utilities, how we fit in this macro landscape that I talked about at the beginning. And I felt like we needed a new brand to properly reflect these changes. Polaris has been operating as a really strong business, but it's primarily focused in California, and it has had more of this hardware-enabled solution. And so as we transition and really focus on scale, growing into new markets, new states, and building this hardware ecosystem where we become hardware agnostic and really lean into our DERMS platform, I felt that it justified the business is the same. We have the same team. We serve the same customers that we've served, and those customers will continue to be supported, and really no changes in that regard. This is really about the next chapter and the growth of the business and where we go from here. And so really putting this kind of line in the sand of our next chapter, I think, is really exciting. So it's same team, same ultimate mission of driving value to growers, but now it's repositioned to reflect everything that we've discussed. So Tim, I'm so pumped. We spent a lot of time working on the name, the brand, the logo, and I'm really excited to finally get this out in the world. We've been sitting on this for a while, Tim. This has been tough to keep, undercover.
Cupping to the wraps. Yeah, we've been purposely not talking a ton about Polaris because we had all this in the works and wanted to make kind of the big splash to start the year, but excited to kind of plant the flag now. We've got an exciting 2026 ahead with continuing to roll out these programs in California, and also like actively talking to mark to utilities in new states, like you mentioned, to kind of expand what Yield does outside of California.
So I guess what I'll wrap this up is, how can you get involved and partner? So if you're a grower, and if you're in California in either PG&E or Southern California Edison territories, you can reach out, learn more about the programs we offer in those markets, and we'd love to have you participating. And if you have existing automation with our partners, which I want to make a big shout out, Tim, to all of our partners. So we have Wisecon, Netafim, Verdi, FarmBlocks, Lumo, Swan Systems, and Ranch Systems. Just some amazing partners that are really impressive and building amazing solutions for farmers. If you work with those guys, we can tap into the integrations that we're building, and you could take advantage of those integrations that we are building. So reach out to learn more about how you can participate in those programs. We have a link in the show notes specifically for growers that are interested in these programs. If you're an ag tech company and you control an energy asset on the farm, we'd love to talk to you. We'd love to build an integration together. What we offer ag tech partners is the ability to really pass along these savings, these incentive programs to your end customer, right? It can make your product stickier because you're providing and offering these incentive programs to your customers and optimizing their energy use. So if you're an ag tech company in irrigation, but even across the farm that manages an energy asset, please reach out. We'd love to learn about building integration and partnership with you. And then lastly, I don't know if we have a ton of utilities listening to the Modern Acre podcast, but if you're a utility or you work or know of a utility in different ag markets, reach out. We'd love to figure out how to connect with you, build an ag specific program, flexibility program in your market so we can unlock more of this flexible capacity. Because bringing this back, Tim, to the point of why we're doing this, we offer these virtual power plants to utilities so that they can manage this load growth, right? So we can actually, as a economy, support this staggering growth of the grid. So reach out if you're interested in partnering. Tim, we have a lot coming this year, but I'm so excited to finally talk about Yield and the direction we're going, which I'm just so pumped about. So appreciate everyone listening. Check out the website, yieldenergy.com, and we'd love to hear from you.